The land of Egypt shimmered under a pharaoh's rule. The sun cast a golden hue over the vast deserts and the mighty Nile River, which was the lifeline of this ancient civilization. The grandeur of the pyramids stood tall, a testament to the architectural prowess and the rich history of the Egyptian empire. Yet beneath this splendor, a darker story unfolded. Life was hard for the Israelites. They toiled day and night under the scorching sun, their bodies weary from the relentless labor. The pharaoh had enslaved them, forcing them to build his grand monuments and cities. Their cries for freedom echoed through the land, but they were met with silence and oppression. They were forced to serve as slaves. Their hands were calloused from the heavy loads they carried, and their spirits were crushed under the weight of their bondage. Each day was a struggle for survival, a fight to maintain their dignity in the face of relentless adversity. Pharaoh feared their growing numbers. He saw the Israelites as a threat to his power, a potential uprising that could destabilize his reign. His paranoia grew with each passing day, and he devised a cruel plan to curb their population. He ordered all newborn Hebrew boys to be thrown into the Nile River. A mother grieved. Her heart was heavy with sorrow as she held her newborn son, knowing that his life was in grave danger. The decree was merciless, and the fear of losing her child consumed her every thought. She wanted to save her son. She wove a basket. With trembling hands she meticulously crafted a small vessel, her only hope of saving her precious child. Each weave was a prayer, each strand a plea for his safety. It was waterproofed with tar. She carefully applied the tar, ensuring that the basket would float and protect her baby from the waters of the Nile. This simple act of love and desperation was her last resort. She placed her baby inside. With tears streaming down her face, she gently laid her son in the basket, whispering a silent prayer for his safety. The weight of her decision bore heavily on her heart, but she knew it was the only way to give him a chance at life. The basket floated amongst the reeds. The gentle current of the Nile carried the basket, cradling the baby as it drifted among the reeds. The river, a symbol of life and sustenance, now held the fragile hope of a desperate mother. The pharaoh's daughter came to the river. She was drawn to the water's edge, perhaps by fate or divine intervention. The sight of the basket among the reeds piqued her curiosity, and she approached it with a sense of wonder. She found the basket and the baby. As she opened the basket, her eyes met the innocent gaze of the baby inside. Her heart softened, and she felt an inexplicable connection to the child. She knew she had to protect him. The baby's sister Miriam was watching. Hidden among the reeds, Miriam watched with bated breath. She had followed the basket, unable to leave her brother's fate to chance. Her heart raced as she saw the princess discover the baby. She bravely offered to find a Hebrew woman to nurse the child. The princess agreed. Summoning all her courage, Miriam stepped forward and spoke to the princess. Her quick thinking and bravery saved her brother's life as the princess accepted her offer. The baby was reunited with his mother. The joy and relief that washed over the mother were indescribable. She held her son close, grateful for the miracle that had brought him back to her. He was raised in safety. Under the watchful eye of his mother and the protection of the princess, the baby grew up in a safe and loving environment. His early years were filled with care and nurturing, a stark contrast to the peril he had once faced. The baby's name was Moses. This child, once destined for death, would grow to become a pivotal figure in history. His journey, marked by divine intervention and human courage, began with a simple basket of hope. Moses grew up in Pharaoh's palace. He was raised as a prince. He learned about Egyptian culture. He was strong and learned quickly. He received the best education. One day Moses saw an Egyptian taskmaster beating a Hebrew slave. He was enraged. He felt a kinship with the slaves. He knew he was different. He was a Hebrew. He could not stand by and watch the injustice. Moses' anger overwhelmed him. He struck the taskmaster. He killed him. Pharaoh heard about what Moses had done. He was furious. Moses had to flee. He left Egypt and journeyed to Midian. In Midian, Moses found refuge. He met a priest named Jethro. He married Jethro's daughter, Zipporah. He became a shepherd. He lived a simple life. He cared for his flock. He learned about the God of his ancestors. Years passed as Moses tended his flock. One day he saw something amazing. It was a burning bush. The bush was on fire, but it was not consumed. Moses was curious. He approached the bush. A voice called out from the bush. The voice identified itself as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God told Moses to return to Egypt. He had a mission for Moses. Moses was afraid, but God promised to be with him. Moses returned to Egypt. He stood before Pharaoh and delivered God's message. "Let my people go," Moses declared. But Pharaoh refused. He defied God, so God sent plagues upon Egypt. The Nile turned to blood. Locusts swarmed the land. Boils covered the Egyptians. Still, Pharaoh refused. Finally, God sent the 10th plague. The firstborn of every Egyptian household died. Pharaoh was heartbroken. He finally agreed to let the Israelites go. Section 6. A Sea of Freedom. The Israelites fled Egypt, leaving behind a life of slavery and oppression. They embarked on a journey towards an uncertain future, driven by the hope of freedom and a promise of a new land. They were led by Moses, a man chosen by God to guide them. With his staff in hand, Moses directed the large group through the harsh desert terrain, instilling hope and courage in their hearts. The Israelites carried their belongings on their backs, each step heavy with the weight of their past and the uncertainty of their future. They moved as a community, supporting one another through the arduous journey. They journeyed towards the Red Sea, a vast expanse of water that seemed to mark the end of their path. As they approached, Pharaoh, the ruler of Egypt, changed his mind about letting them go. He sent his army after them, a formidable force of soldiers, horses, and chariots. The sound of the approaching army filled the air, striking fear into the hearts of the Israelites. The Israelites were trapped between Pharaoh's army and the sea. The people were terrified, their hopes of freedom seemingly dashed. In this moment of despair, Moses raised his staff towards the water, a symbol of faith and divine intervention. God parted the waters of the Red Sea, creating a miraculous pathway through the sea. The waters stood like walls on either side, revealing a dry seabed for the Israelites to cross. The Israelites walked across on dry ground, their path illuminated by the light of hope and divine protection. The Egyptian army, relentless in their pursuit, followed them into the parted sea. As the last of the Israelites reached the other side, the waters crashed down upon the Egyptian soldiers, swallowing them in a powerful surge. The Israelites were free, their journey towards a new life just beginning. Section 7. Wilderness Trials and Triumphs. The Israelites journeyed through the wilderness. They were led by God. He provided for their needs. He gave them manna to eat. He brought forth water from a rock. But the people complained. They doubted God. Moses climbed Mount Sinai. He received the 10 Commandments from God. These laws would guide the people. They learned how to live together in peace and harmony. Section 8. A Glimpse of the Promise. For 40 years the Israelites wandered the wilderness. Moses led them with strength and compassion. He taught them God's laws. He reminded them of God's promises. He encouraged them in their faith. As Moses grew old, God showed him the promised land. It was a land flowing with milk and honey, but God told Moses he would not enter. Moses had been faithful. He had led God's people, but he had disobeyed God one time. Section 9. The Enduring Legacy of a Leader. Moses climbed Mount Nebo. This was no ordinary climb. It was a journey filled with profound significance. As he ascended, he carried with him the weight of his people's hopes and dreams. Each step was a testament to his unwavering faith and determination. He looked out over the promised land. The vast expanse stretched before him, a land flowing with milk and honey, a land promised to his people. It was a moment of both triumph and sorrow, for he knew he would not enter it. He died there, on the mountain, having fulfilled his mission. He was 120 years old. His life had been long and full of trials, yet he remained steadfast. The people mourned deeply, for they had lost not just a leader, but a guiding light, a beacon of hope in their darkest times. They had lost their leader, the one who had led them out of bondage, who had stood before Pharaoh and demanded freedom, the one who had parted the Red Sea and brought them to the brink of the promised land. They had lost their prophet, the one who had spoken to God, who had received the 10 Commandments, who had guided them with wisdom and compassion. His loss was immeasurable, but they carried his teachings in their hearts. His words, his lessons, his example lived on. They remembered his teachings about justice, mercy, and faith. They held on to the hope he had instilled in them. Moses' story is an inspiration. It is a story of resilience, of unwavering faith in the face of adversity. It is a story that transcends time, speaking to the core of the human spirit. He teaches us about courage, The courage to stand up for what is right even when it is difficult. The courage to lead even when the path is uncertain. The courage to believe even when hope seems lost. He teaches us about faith. Faith in a higher power. Faith in a greater purpose. Faith in ourselves and in each other. His faith was his strength, and it can be ours too. He teaches us about leadership. True leadership is not about power but about service. It is about guiding others with wisdom and compassion. His legacy lives on in every act of kindness, in every stand for justice, in every moment of faith. It reminds us to fight for justice, to stand up for the oppressed, to speak out against injustice, to strive for a world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. It reminds us to trust in God, to have faith in a higher power, to believe that there is a greater plan even when we cannot see it, to trust that we are never alone. It reminds us to never give up hope. Hope is the light that guides us through the darkest times. It is the promise of a better tomorrow. Moses' legacy is a testament to the enduring power of hope.